Breaking news out of the NBA, John Wall about to become an unrestricted free agent later this week. The Rockets have agreed to buy out the final year of Wall's contract. Wall was owed $47 million this season in the final year of his four-year, $171 million extension he signed with the Wizards. Wall is soon to sign with the LA Clippers.
Man, oh man, I don't think we've had this exciting of a free agency since probably the 2019 NBA offseason. I mean, earlier on today, we had the breaking news that Kyrie Irving was going to stay with the Brooklyn Nets after him leading all of NBA media to actually think that he may sign with the Los Angeles Lakers on a 6.5 taxpayers mid-level exception. And now we have breaking news where John Wall's officially going to sign with another Los Angeles team, not the Lakers. Before we get to the content, this is our second video of the day. I love when double uploads happen, man. If you're getting this video late night in your sub box, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. And if you think I talk too much and my videos are too long, well, we make shorter versions of this content and post it onto my Instagram as a reel or onto my TikTok account. Now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? John Wall and I guess the Washington Wizards have had some pretty horrific luck over the past couple of years. I mean, during the 2017 to 2018 season, John Wall seemed to have really turned a corner in his game. One of the biggest flaws to his game was his three-point shooting, and he was able to get that number to a whopping 37%. Bear in mind, prior to this, Wall on average was about a 30% shooter. So the fact that he was able to do this in his age 27 season was very significant. Unfortunately for John Wall, midway through the 2018 to 2019 season, ironically, because we made a video on this guy earlier today, Kyrie Irving and him got into a collision and John Wall would end up tearing his Achilles tendon. The most messed up part about this is the contract extension that he signed with the Washington Wizards, which was a 4-year, $171 million supermax contract extension, didn't even kick in yet. So John Wall easily became one of the worst contracts in the entire NBA, and it's truly horrific luck for both sides. I mean, this was a beautiful situation where John Wall was willing to commit to the team that drafted him from day one, and the Washington Wizards were willing to pay him as such. Ultimately, what would happen is John Wall would have to sit out after the 2019 to 2020 season, and by the time he would recover from his Achilles injury, he would be traded to the Houston Rockets for Russell Westbrook. Now, when he was going to the Houston Rockets, there was some optimism at first. Bear in mind that there was a brief point during the end of the James Harden era in Houston where James Harden said that he was willing to make it work out with John Wall. This was very brief. Now, I don't know what happened in training camp. Maybe James Harden saw something in John Wall's game, because bear in mind, this was when we first were going to see post-Achilles tear John Wall. But very shortly after, James Harden demanded a trade and he was traded to the Brooklyn Nets. John Wall would run back the clock with DeMarcus Cousins on the Houston Rockets, and for a brief period of time, it was a nice little reunion. And in that lone season with the Houston Rockets, I must admit, for a guy that I personally didn't think was going to be super successful, because John Wall's game was very much predicated on his athleticism, and whenever you tear your Achilles, it's typically an athleticism killer. He was very good for his brief period of time playing for the Houston Rockets. He only played for 40 games with the Houston Rockets during the 2020 to 2021 season, but he averaged 21 points per game and shot 32% from three. During this season, however, his PER would dip to a career low of 15.4. His offensive box plus minus would dip to a career low of 1.2. And in terms of his win shares, he actually contributed negative wins to the Houston Rockets. So what was really interesting is the Houston Rockets decided that, hey, we're going to bench John Wall this past year just so we could give Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green and some of our younger guys some runs so we could actually see what we have here. What was interesting about this strategy is it was essentially the exact opposite strategy of what the Oklahoma City Thunder do, and they're in the midst of a rebuild. The OKC Thunder have been grabbing undervalued talent, building up the talent, and flipping that talent for draft picks for the past 3 years. And to be honest, it's been working out pretty freaking well for them. I mean, mean, they absolutely dominated the NBA draft with their lottery picks. But ultimately, what Houston decided to do was to have him sit on the bench over the past year, and as a result, his value would diminish. The only time I would hear anything about John Wall was if his name was dangled in Los Angeles Lakers rumors in a trade package for Russell Westbrook and a future first-round draft pick, which the Lakers didn't end up biting on. I personally just never quite understood, especially like, say if you're even tanking. This is a guy that contributed negative wins last year. So at the very minimum, like if you're trying to tank, shouldn't you have John Wall out there anyways? I don't know. But ultimately, the Houston Rockets decided to have him sit for the past year. And once you do that with a player, his value obviously takes a bit of a hit. And now the reason why this is all significant is after a year of being in limbo, of him eventually even saying that he wants to play in the middle of the season for the Houston Rockets, but the Houston Rockets forcing him to still be benched because he wanted a starting role, John Wall finally agreed to a contract buyout with the Houston Rockets. And to be honest, as a Laker fan, this kind of kills me a little bit because it sounds like the dream scenario for the Lakers, but they were so busy chasing fool's gold in Kyrie Irving. And the reason I'm saying fool's gold is because I'm very confident, and I was very confident from the very beginning, that Kyrie Irving wouldn't leave $30 million on the table to leave the Brooklyn Nets and sign with the Los Angeles Lakers. I felt like the Lakers should have been doing maybe more of their homework and pursuing a player like John Wall, but that's not what ended up happening. So here's the breaking news for you guys. So according to Adrian Wojnarowski, John Wall is planning to sign with the Los Angeles Clippers once he clears waivers, sources tell ESPN. Now, this completely shocked me because I didn't even know that he agreed to a buyout, but I guess the moment he agreed to a buyout, he decided to state his intent. Now, the reason why I'm saying state his intent is because he technically hasn't signed a contract yet, and Woj actually mentions this. Other teams are calling to pursue John Wall in free agency, but his intention is to join the Los Angeles Clippers, sources tell ESPN. So you might be wondering how much he is going to sign with the Los Angeles Clippers, and again, this is the part that makes me the saltiest as a Laker fan. John Wall has agreed to take $6.5 million less to become a free agent, which is roughly the amount of the taxpayer mid-level exception, which John Wall could receive once he is able to negotiate a deal with the Los Angeles Clippers. The Rockets wanted to reach an agreement with Wall before free agency begins Thursday to maximize his options in selecting his next team, sources said. Now again, I still don't understand why the Houston Rockets opted for this path. I mean, at the very minimum, have him play for the past year and then flip him. So for the Houston Rockets, I actually give them a D or an F for the way they handled this situation, because I feel like you should get a return for a player like John Wall, especially if you traded Russell Westbrook for John Wall. But let's put the Rockets standpoint aside. They're clearly all in on a rebuild. They just want to put this all behind them and move forward, and I guess we could understand that. I just feel like this could have been handled a little bit better by them. For John Wall, I can only say I'm really happy for him because this is the first time in his entire career where he got to pick and choose his team, and if you ask me, I think he chose the right team. The Los Angeles Clippers have been starving for a point guard since the moment the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George era began. And they tried many different point guards throughout this time, and they were never able to get themselves a proper floor general to set up Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Now with the acquisition of John Wall, yes, even if he is post-Achilles tear John Wall, I think this team's complete. I'm very excited because this is easily the best team John Wall's been on, and the Clippers check off all of my boxes for a team that could contend in the West. Now, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that the Los Angeles Clippers are better than the Golden State Warriors, because I think if recent NBA history has shown us anything, it's that we should be patient to see how these players play together. But on paper, let's just take a look at what the Los Angeles Clippers have. Their coach is one of the best coaches in the NBA. I mean, after watching Tyronn Lue outcoach several other prestigious coaches in various playoff series with his in-game adjustments, I have tremendous respect for him and his growth as a head coach, and the fact that the Clippers have him calling the shots on the sidelines is something that you should be confident in from the very get-go. But on top top of that, they have the two best two-way players in the entire league, and Kawhi Leonard is pretty much coming off of a season where he load managed the entire year. Yes, I know he had an Achilles tear, but you get what I'm saying. He took a whole year off of basketball. He's gonna probably come back fresh and ready to dominate again. You had Paul George that had one of his best years of his career since his final season in OKC. He really took strides as a leader, especially with Kawhi Leonard being out. And although his three-point percentage wasn't as incredible as it was last year, he still impacted the game positively. I mean, he's one of the few wings in the NBA that could give you a positive offensive box plus minus and defensive box plus minus. So you combine that with Kawhi Leonard coming back with the acquisition of John Wall on a $6.5 million salary. And then you remember that this team has a pretty freaking good bench. This is a team that just traded for Norman Powell and Robert Covington in the middle of the season last year. They recently brought back Reggie Jackson. Yes, they're probably going to lose Nicholas Batum, but this is a team that you could have a lot of confidence in. That could potentially be a Western Conference Finals team next year. And if you're a Clipper fan, and this is coming from a Laker fan, and I'm just being unbiased here, you guys should be very excited because you guys are making really intelligent basketball decisions. I'm excited to see what this team can do. You have Marcus Morris, Norman Powell, Kawhi Leonard, Robert Covington. Then you have Luke Kennard that literally shot 45% from three this past year. This is a team that you can get really excited about. So if you're a Clipper fan, let me know in the comment section down below how you're feeling about all this. And if you didn't catch our video on Kyrie Irving humiliating all of NBA media, make sure you check that out. I'll leave it in the end screen for you guys. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.